Gears Tactics. Let's talk about it. This is the newest Gears of War game. I guess the follow-up to Gears of War 5, which it's actually, in terms of story-wise, it takes place before all of the other Gears of War games. So this is a prequel. And it is a tactical role-playing game in the vein of, say, like XCOM or like the old Fallout way of playing of Fallout games. And me and Derrick have played it, and so far I think we've both come away pretty impressed with what they've done. So in my opinion, Gears kind of lends itself to the tactics formula, where you're hiding behind cover and you're taking your shots, and even the third-person games you play a little bit more tactically than you do a normal third-person shooter or first-person shooter, and it translates really, really well over to the turn-based tactics game. And they don't quite go as deep as, say, like an XCOM game with this. The stuff you do outside of combat is very limited to basically upgrading your squad. They earn skill points through experience, and you can unlock them. They're all class-based, so like a sniper can only unlock sniper skills, can only use sniper rifles, and certain like types of armor and stuff like that. And you kind of upgrade your squad along that path, but that's kind of all you do outside of combat, outside of the missions. There's no big base to build, no research to conduct like you get in an XCOM game. So if you're going into it expecting that, you might want to temper your expectations. But where this game, in my opinion, ends up kind of being better than the current XCOM games is in the combat, where you actually get in and start fighting. In that way, it's pretty traditional, but there's a few things that they've changed with the formula that make the game unique and stand out from XCOM and make the game, actually, in my opinion, a little bit more tactical. So before we get into the nitty-gritty, Derrick, what has been your takeaway from it since you've been checking it out?
Well, I've really enjoyed it. It's it's a little bit faster paced than you would like an XCOM game. I With the outside stuff that you were talking about, to keep on with that, I just found out that you could change like the color of things. That you can actually like modify your weapons a little bit too in your gear. So like with the little crates that you pick up throughout the game, you can then unlock things for certain weapons. So I started messing around with that some. So it gives you a little bit more of like build control, if you say, even though everybody's kind of like you said, it's preset characters. They each have your role, and then you can kind of pick what your squad is consisted of. But
So there you have your hero characters, which are so it's Gabe Diaz, which is, I think, the father of Kate Diaz. I'm not sure if it's father or grandfather. I think it's father, which is the protagonist of the latest Gears 5 game, and she showed up first in Gears 4. So he's the protagonist, and he is a support class, which makes him essentially a healer, and that limits him to the types of stuff he can have. Like, he can't carry a sniper rifle, for instance. He has to carry his Lancer. But on that Lancer, you can equip some customization slots. Like, you can get a better stock for it, so he gets better accuracy. You can give him like an extended mag, so he has an extra shot. a scope to make him more accurate and stuff like that. And you can do that with all of the classes. Like you get a heavy gunner that has like a big giant chain gun that they carry around, and you can add an accessory that makes it more powerful or something like that. And you unlock the skills, which actually they have kind of pretty extensive skill trees. So for each class, the skill tree is going to be the same for everybody in that class. So once you see a class for like the support, you know what all the support characters are going to have. But where it starts to get interesting is you have these main characters, which is Gabe Diaz. There's Sid, which is somebody who's with you right from the beginning. He's got like an eye patch and is gruff, old, kind of like fills the Marcus role, basically. And then as you progress through the game, you get more of these hero characters. But you also recruit, I guess you just call them regular soldiers. And they also occupy classes. So like you get, the first heavy gunner you get isn't actually a hero. It's just somebody that, a regular soldier that is a heavy gunner. And the big difference between these two is, these two types of distinctions is the main characters can't die. If you if one of them gets down on a mission and they get killed, like they bleed out or they get executed, you fail the mission. Because they're story characters, the story wouldn't be able to progress without them. But the other characters, the recruits you find throughout the game, they can die, and that's where you kind of get the element of XCOM where you kind of all of the recruits in an XCOM game can be killed. So you can put a lot of effort leveling up a character. And losing them in combat can be a big deal. Like it can be a significant blow to all the progress you've made on that particular character, and that can happen too with these lesser characters. So there's a little bit of a distinction there. It's not quite as I guess simple or brutal as XCOM can be with that. Because you do have the hero characters, but they do that. The only thing that I'd critique about the out of combat stuff is it's the menus and all the different slots and stuff. It's very confusing.
I will completely agree with that.
For one, I think there's too many slots that you can customize on a character. So like you can customize their helmet, their gun, their chest armor, and their boots. And those are the ones that have actual gameplay implications. Things you do there, you can give them a piece of chest armor that gives them more health, or boots that give them a better chance to evade, which just means there's a higher chance that an enemy taking shots at them will miss.
But and then you can change the color of all that, and then they take a step into like the Anthem thing with like the texture cores, if you want to call it that, where it'll change the actual texture of what it looks like, not just the color on that piece.
Yeah, and that's where it kind of falls flat for me. And I think the problem is that all of that is on the same menu. So like when you look at the way it's broken down, up at the top you have your gameplay stuff, and then right down at the bottom of that you have all of your cosmetic stuff, and it just looks overwhelming. And it's very easy to get kind of far into this game without realizing what you can customize and what actually matters on that screen. And it gets even more overwhelming when you have like a squad of like 15 soldiers and you need to stay on top of making sure they all have the right equipment. Like you can't take 15 soldiers out on a single mission, but you have them all on your roster. And you don't want to accidentally equip a soldier that isn't like fully equipped, I guess, if that makes sense. So when you come back from a mission, you got like you'll have some new armor that you can apply, and it kind of gives you information on, like, it gives you little triangles up in the corner of every single character and every single place that you can make changes. But it's probably the biggest frustration that I have with the game right now is the way that that's all laid out, and I wish they did a better job there.
Have you been yelled at yet by the game for not having something equipped?
Yeah. It'll be like
this. I was like, I don't have a helmet for this character. How the hell am I supposed to equip one? And it's like, you don't want to start yet. You don't have something equipped. Please go down where we have this highlighted and check it out. There's nothing there.
Yeah.
And then you click it like 10 times, and finally it's like, all right, you can start. You're good to go, bud.
Yeah, and then it's also confusing how they break down, like visually confusing how they break down pieces of armor that have been equipped on different characters versus pieces of armor that haven't. And you can't get a good snapshot to see who has what equipped. So like it's even confusing just to talk about this.
No, it totally is, because I ran into that when I acquired Dom as a character, and he's got the football helmet. So when I was looking at another character, Cole, sorry, so like I was on a character, and it's like, oh, you can equip this helmet here, and it's like it says like 0 out of 1. So I was like, okay, that means it's not equipped to anybody. I try to equip it. Oh, it's equipped to him. Do you want to transfer it to this one? No, I thought I had one available.
Yeah. Right, and then it doesn't say right there like who it's equipped to. It doesn't tell you who it's equipped to until you click it to equip, and then you're like, who is Felicia? Is Felicia somebody I'm taking on my squad?
Yeah,
I don't want to.
That's why too.
Take
is like
that.
The main ones I'm using, I have them all color coded, so I've given everybody a color.
Yeah.
And then it makes it easier to differentiate between them on the field too. So like, all right, I've got this guy's yellow, this guy's red, this guy's purple, this guy's bright pink. All right, I know who's who right now. Thanks, game. I like that little bit right there.
Yeah, and it just gets worse the more characters you recruit, because it ends up being more of just a frustration having them in your squad than anything, so you don't really care too much about them. Basically, when you can, you're going to be taking out your main guys, because they have the best perks. You've been upgrading them since the beginning of the game. They're just the better options to take into the field when you can. There are certain secondary missions where you can only take a single unit, and it can't be a story character. So there is a reason to kind of invest in some of these secondary characters, but you really only need to be upgrading one at a time, one, I guess, class at a time. So like right now I've got a heavy gunner that I'm upgrading. I've got a like a scout class that I've been upgrading, because the scout is pretty good for solo missions, because they can cloak themselves, and they have high evasion, so you can hopefully survive a little bit longer. But yeah, I mean that's the menus. Once you actually get into the game, it's actually pretty good. So they've kind of changed a little bit from the classic XCOM formula. I think, like Derrick said, they've sped up the missions a little bit, so it's more based on combat Well, I guess it's more based on presenting the combat front and center, not necessarily just constant combat. It's more like with XCOM games, it would be more like you kind of inch forward a little bit, see if you find some enemies, and then wait till your next turn. This is more like, here are the enemies, and now place your soldiers in the best positions to take them out. And, you still have the normal XCOM stuff where you have hit percentages and reasons why the hit percentages are the way they are. I think this does a really good job of kind of breaking down why a particular hit percentage is what it is, which is something that has really frustrated me with XCOM over the years, and is kind of like why I prefer this so far to the recent, the like say XCOM 2, in that it's a lot more transparent with why your hit percentages are what they are. So then you can make the technical decision on moving your character or trying some other approach to the combat encounter. So it kind of makes it feel a little bit less like a 100% roll of the dice, or them trying to pull the wool over your eyes and give you a shitty shot for no reason. And I appreciate that. The other thing that this game does, and this isn't the only game that does this, the recently XCOM Chimera Squad did this, and I think there was another XCOM-like game that was made from another developer that did something similar to this, and it's the way it handles Overwatch. So previously, Overwatch was kind of this carte blanche. You just activate it, and if any enemy comes within a certain view, like anywhere on the map, your character will engage with it, no matter what. If it's like 10 miles away, if it's behind cover, if it's behind them, in front of them, to the left, to the right, doesn't matter where they were. If the enemy made a movement, they would try to engage with it. And it always felt kind of like I've got nothing else to do with this enemy, this unit. I might as well just put them into Overwatch, and hopefully I get a hit. If not, oh well. If it does, great. But what they've done here with Gears is they've made Overwatch a lot more tactical. It's a lot more of there's a lot more consideration going into using Overwatch. And the way that they've done that is they've made it so you choose a cone of Overwatch as opposed to it just being the entire battlefield. So like when you choose Overwatch for an enemy, for a character, you then set up a cone, and not only does the cone cover a degree out from the character, but you can also set how far out they should watch for Overwatch. And only enemies that come into that cone will trigger the Overwatch for that character.
And it's also limited by the type of weapon too, which I saw and I was like, oh, this is cool. That adds a little more to it than it just being this cone. Like the shotgunner's range was way shorter, so it was like half the difference than the people with the lance.
Yeah. So different weapons will have different cones. So like sniper rifles will have these really skinny cones that go really far. Like you can send them out really far. The Lancers are kind of like the mid-range, and the shotguns are really wide cones for short-range stuff. And yeah, you got to take all of that into consideration as well. But what's really cool about it is you can set up these kind of these series of Overwatch picks, I guess you would say. So like you set your first guy up to hit to take out enemies at the farthest range. Then you set the next guy up to kind of create a layer behind him. So like once any enemies that get past that first overwatch then get hit by the second overwatch, and then you have a third person with another even shorter range overwatch, and it just kind of creates this like constant wall of trigger boom, trigger boom, trigger boom, and hopefully whatever is running at you will get wiped out.
And it's super satisfying when it works out. Like when you set up this plan and you're like, all right, I think they're going to move this way. We've got, these three guys set up. This guy's going to watch this way just in case. And then you just like mow down a whole group of them that decides to move.
Yeah, and they kind of lean into it a little bit with the melee enemies that run at you. What do they call them? They're on all fours and they just run at you. Anyway, they send them in groups of 4, so you're kind of encouraged to test out your Overwatch on that, especially at the beginning. And they just get mowed down if you set up your Overwatches because they're so weak and they just run directly at you. So it's pretty satisfying, and like the sound it makes when the Overwatch is triggered is satisfying too. It's like this click sound that it's like yeah as they all get activated and murdered as they run at you. So there's that. It really makes Overwatch almost like a way to play the game. Like you can play this game just using Overwatch if you wanted to. Like you rarely have to take actual shots during combat if you don't want to. And the way that they kind of make that an even more viable solution is the fact that you don't just get one shot with Overwatch. You get however many action points your character has once you activate Overwatch. So by default, each character has 3 action points, and you can move them with those action points. You can take shots. Taking a shot will no, that's not true. Taking a shot doesn't end combat for them. Like you can take up to 3 shots if you want to, which is another big distinction from XCOM. But yeah, if you want to, you can set up an Overwatch with 3 action points, and that character will take 3 Overwatch shots if an enemy crosses into their path. So you can just really set up these nasty picks on the enemies if you want to, if you know that they're going to have to move down a certain corridor, and it's really cool, and really kind of making this game kind of why I'm liking it so much is because it has these this particular that sounds weird to just pin it on one thing, but it really is such a significant part of the game that it makes it feel like you're actually operating as part of a team, and you are like the Gears, like you are the elite soldiers that are taking out just these hordes of enemies through more than just brute force, but also like I guess you could say like discipline. And it's the moment to moment combat is really satisfying in this game.
Also like the detail they've put into it with like they'll do like the quick little scenes in between going through. You'll get like the quick shots if you like pull off a headshot or something, or when you run up to do the executions. Like it's laid out pretty well. Like you get that enjoyment that you would from playing a Gears game, but then you also have this very satisfying tactical element from that type of gameplay, and it just comes together pretty well.
Yeah, like so like if you use your chainsaw, your Lancer chainsaw, you'll still get that canned cutscene of Gabe chainsawing some locusts in half or something like that. It won't be just from a tactical perspective. It'll go down into like a third-person cinematic camera view. So you still get that. It still absolutely feels like a Gears game in that respect. And the story is what it is. It's about as in depth and moving as a Gears game gets.
Yeah.
Which is to say, not too much. Not there isn't a whole lot of meat to it, but it is pretty interesting and kind of gives you a different perspective on things that happened before the first game. I'm looking forward. I guess the other thing to add is there are also boss battles in this, which are interesting for these types of games. Like the first one you run into is you have to take down Brumac, and it's okay. It kind of turns into this, like, I don't know, just kind of very repetitious, because you have to target specific parts of the Brumac in order to take him down, and he just kind of stomps around in a circle as you're taking him out. He's dangerous, and he'll take out some of your soldiers if you're not careful, but it's really just ends up being like, just running around in circles trying to keep hitting him in the back, because that's his weak point and stuff like that. So I'm interested to see what other boss battles they have later on in the game, if there's something that's a little bit more interesting. But the Brumac one was okay, but it was it wasn't quite as exhilarating as I hoped it would be. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what they do with this series, if they keep making more of these as well as more of the regular third-person Gears games, because I'd like to see them continue the formula. I'd like to see them clean up the out-of-combat stuff, like have another chance at that, and maybe add a little bit more strategy outside of combat, like, I don't know, like the base building from XCOM, or at least some research or something like that. But I guess we'll see. For right now, they definitely nailed the gameplay and the tactical combat and stuff like that. So that's cool. Yeah, that's gonna wrap it up for Gears Tactics, I guess. Unless, Derrick, you have anything else you want to add?
No, I think we pretty much covered it. It's a nice little solid package outside of some semi-confusing menus.
Yeah. So I guess I should mention that right now this is only on PC. It does have controller support. You can use an Xbox controller with it, and it has all the button prompts and everything like that. So that gives me hope that it will eventually come to Xbox. However, I will say that it's definitely a lot easier to navigate with a mouse and keyboard. So they do have, if they bring it over to Xbox, if they bring it over the way it is, it's serviceable. But I hope that they put a little work in to make the controller support a little bit more intuitive than what's currently there. It's just hard to, there's a lot of buttons to press and a lot of things to click on, and I do
have something to add then.
The mouse and keyboard is significantly better in that respect. And I guess probably the biggest issue that I had with the with using it with the controller was just performing actions that I didn't want to perform, like accidentally telling somebody to move when I didn't want them to move, or like my Overwatch didn't quite line up with where I wanted it to, but I pressed the button by accident anyway. and I just had a better experience with that using the mouse and keyboard than the controller. Now, what were you gonna say?
Oh, I was gonna say, to go along with like the keyboard and the mouse and talking about the controllers, the initial thing about this game that like blew my mind, because I've never seen it or played a game that did this before.
Oh yeah, you took the drugs, right? And it was like, whoa, the lights.
I took all the drugs, and the game took over my keyboard, my mouse pad, and my mouse. And it actually, during the tutorial, lit up the keys that it wanted me to press so I could see where they were. And then during gameplay, the keys that you can use are the only ones that are lit up. But then when you get shot at, it like replicates gunfire using the light. So you'll see like the flash, everything will go white, and then it'll start flashing. So you get that flash. And I'm playing in a dark room, so when this went off, I was like,
yeah,
oh, this is really cool.
It's like a rave almost, right?
Yeah. But
you set up all those overwatches, and then a bunch of wretches. That's what they're called. Those little enemies that run at you.
And then they're scratching me. Do something about them.
Oh yeah, they'll get right up on you, and then you can't move because they just attack you. Oh man, they can get annoying if they get up close to you. But yeah, you can just set up a whole bunch of overwatches with a bunch of those wretches running at you, and then all of a sudden it's just like flashing lights constantly.
Yep. Yeah, I just had to mention that because that was like one of the first things. I was like, oh, I thought all my shit broke.
Yeah.
But it was a pretty interesting feature of the game, you know. MechWarriors has
pretty
it
cool.
too. I just haven't dove into that too much because the movement controls piss me off.
Mm-hmm. All right, Gears Tactics. It's on PC right now. It's on Game Pass. I think it's on Steam as well. It's not just the Microsoft Store. So you can grab it there if you want. And yeah, really good tactics game. Hope they do more in the future. Thank you for joining us on this very special episode of Voxel Viewpoint. If you'd like to hear or see more, please consider subscribing to us on your favorite podcast app, subscribing to us on YouTube, or visiting voxelvoice.com, where all of our great content comes together in one place. Also check out the Voxel Voice Facebook group, where you can join in on the discussion with a great like-minded community.